So take me back to 20-year-old Nathan. What was the original reason why you want to make money?
It's funny, I kinda hate this cliche, but I guess I'm a part of it, and it's that I was always hustling from young. I feel like I had that entrepreneurial spirit inside of me, and the reason why I say I hate that cliche is because I feel like people, they make it out to be like, they just knew they had to start a business and make millions of dollars from, age like 7 years old, and that's why, they are where they are, but I don't find that to be true at all in my life, right? I find my journey as just numerous failures and just, kind of eating shit over and over again until I finally figured it out and, ended up where I am today. But to take you back to that 18-year-old version of myself, which is when everything really started, right? Because before that, it was like I was selling duct tape wallets at school and pixie sticks, and then I was doing reselling in high school. So I was, flipping like Supreme and Bathing Ape and all these kind of hype beast stuff. Yeah, see, so the entrepreneurial spirit from young. But it's not like I knew that I was gonna build a business and make multiple millions of dollars a year. It was more so that I just enjoyed working with people, the relationships that I was building, transacting, learning about money, and obviously having a little bit of extra money in my pocket. And when I think about it, it's the way that I was raised plays a huge part in that because I grew up in, a relatively wealthy pocket of town. So this is not private school money. This is not, kids with parents that have private jets and yachts or anything like that, but upper middle class, I would say. So relatively wealthy for, the small suburb that I was living in. And a lot of the kids around me, they got cars when they turned 16 or 17. They just seemingly had this extra spending money. They could buy lunch at school and I didn't, right? And it's not, I'm actually extremely fortunate that I didn't have any extra money. And I love the way that the philosophy my parents had when it came to raising me and my brothers, because their philosophy was, we want to give you all the opportunity in life. So if you want to play on a sports team, or if you want to, take an online course, or, take a class of some kind, they'll pay for it, but nothing extra. And so I didn't get any spending money for lunch. I couldn't go out and, buy cool clothes. I didn't get the car when I turned 16, like a lot of kids in my circles did. And so I think that was a huge motivating factor for me early on. It was kind of like keeping up with the Joneses, right? Everyone around you is finally able to drive to school, and I'm still walking or biking around the city. Everyone around me is wearing the coolest stuff. And so that motivated me to do whatever I could to get a little bit of extra spending cash to be able to, partake in some of those more, luxury, first world experiences that a lot of the kids in my circles grew up with. And I didn't have the opportunity to from a young age. And, at the time, I remember just sort of resenting my parents for leaving me with $0 in my bank account and basically just saying, you want a car, you figure it out. You want a new bike, you figure it out. You want new clothes, you figure it out. And I didn't really like them at the time because I was like, come on, guys. Like, I know you can afford it, right? We didn't grow up poor. We had a decent sized house. Everything, within reasonable means was covered. I have food on the table. And so there was just nothing extra given to me and my brothers. And I kind of resented my parents for that at the time. But then as I got older, now all the time I'm going back and I'm saying, like, thank you guys so much for raising me this way, because it gave me that fire to, go out and make that little bit of extra money. And then one thing leads to the next, right? So that hype beast reselling ventures in high school kind of got my mind thinking. It got me used to getting out in the world. And, I was riding my bike across the city to do these meetups and these exchanges, going to conferences even downtown, taking the sky trains with, some of my close friends. And then, yeah, by the time I got to university, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life yet. I knew I wanted to make a lot of money, but I didn't really know how that looked. Was I going to go to school to be a lawyer, to be a doctor? I'm not too sure. And so I think a lot of people, when they don't know what they want to do yet, they inevitably go into business school. Yeah. So I was pretty pumped up about that too, because like, I thought I had a little bit of experience in business already. I wanted to learn more about, marketing and kind of the fundamentals. So I went off to business school and I went to UVic, mostly just because that's where all my friends were going. I also heard it was a little bit of a party school. So I thought maybe it'd be a little bit fun to go there compared to some of the other options. And I went there, and the first night that I got there was people banging on my cluster housing, like banging on the door. And I open it and it's these random kids I've never seen before in my life. And they're drunk. They're drunk as shit, right? And they're like, guys, get out here. This is Frosh week. We got a party, right? So at the time I'm thinking, whoa, like, what is college? Like, we did party like this in high school. Like, yeah, we had, house parties here and there, but this is a whole new level. So, we go to the store, we get some liquor, we go out, there's like 5,000 kids, we're kind of out, we're drinking, we're having a good time. And then, I quickly realized that I don't have any money. Like, yeah, I'm here at school and stuff, but all these kids, going out for dinners and getting drinks on the weekend and doing all this stuff, like, I don't really have any money. And so I'm like, okay, I need to do something about that. And, at the time I was working a part-time job, so I was kind of able to cover a little bit of base expenses. Um, but ultimately it was like, I just needed more. I needed the ability to go out on the weekends and not stress about it. I needed the ability to, take a quick vacation, to take the ferry back and forth even to see my family because, even the ferry expenses and just commuting costs money, especially where we live. Everything costs a lot of money, right? And so it was probably after a few weeks of being at business school, of doing the same shit every weekend, where I was like, yeah, this is not this is not what I want to spend my entire year doing. And I think I was also in a fortunate position where school always came relatively easy to me. So the classes that I was attending, I was pretty much acing them. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story. Like, Com 100 was the first business class that I was in. We had this awesome professor. He would give these deep, detailed lectures and really get into the moment. And it was the only class I felt like where I was super, super engaged, but it was natural. Like I was just sitting there and enjoying my time in it. Anyways, it was about 200 people in the lecture, so massive class, Com 100A, so it's that first year rush of all these kids sitting in this big lecture hall. And we have our first ever exam coming up. And, everyone in high school and everyone previously, they tell you, they're like, oh, like university is going to be so much harder than high school. We'll see if you can do it. A lot of people fail. A lot of people drop out. Like, I don't know if you'll be able to make it. So that's kind of what I'm hearing from like friends, family, everybody around me. I'm getting a little bit stressed. So the week leading up to the exam, I'm studying every single day. And ultimately the exam, rolls along. I write the test. I feel pretty confident, but it's my first ever exam at university, so I really don't know what to expect. And, the next day, I come back to the lecture hall and the professor's reading out the results of the exam. So he's like, okay, you know, 60% of students scored between 50 and 70%. And then, 30% of students, unfortunately fell below 50%. And, they're just kind of reading out the stats. And then the highest statistic was 29 out of 30. So I think that was about 97%. And so when the teacher said that was the highest statistic, I was like, holy shit, like, there's some like crazy smart kids in this class. And we get the test back and I see 29 out of 30 in the top right corner of my test. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I actually got the highest mark out of all these 200 people in this class on my first exam in university ever. So it was kind of a combination of like that feeling of being like, okay, wow, not only can I do this, but I can excel in this. And then going back home and being like, that wasn't so hard either. And that was the moment where I was like, you know what? From here on out, I'm going to use this extra time that I have in university to actually build a business. It makes sense. I'm in business school. Why not build a business? The classes are coming easy to me anyway, and I'm, doing really well, and I probably won't have to study as much or as hard on future tests. And that very night after I got that exam back, guess what went into my Google search bar?
How to make money online?
How to make money online, right? And so, from that moment forward, I was just kind of bombarded with this flurry of information from trading to crypto to, e-commerce to forex. Uh, and ultimately, I landed on the agency model.
Yeah.
So I'd done a lot of research into all these different sort of entry level business models, and I had to assess my current situation. I'm like, well, I'm a university student. I got effectively $0 in the bank. In fact, I might even be, starting to get into a little bit of credit card debt here pretty soon. And I just don't have the means. I don't have the specific knowledge to go ahead and start any of these other business models yet. So let me do this agency thing. It seems simple enough. I'll go out, I'll find a client, I'll do some work for them, and I'll get paid. And so what I did is I went to the Google Business Directory in Victoria and I scraped pretty much every local business in the city into a spreadsheet. And then in between classes, I would run home and I would start calling all of them.
Yeah.
And I didn't really have, again, the specific knowledge to do anything for them, but I figured, what's my advantage here? Okay, I'm an 18-year-old kid and I've grown up with social media my whole life. So I can run Facebook pages, I can run Instagram pages, I can, do their social media. And in Victoria, I also realized that a lot of the businesses there are more mom and pop shops. It's less corporate than, say, Vancouver. And that was the angle I took. And after, my first 100 to 200 calls, nobody cared. Nobody bought it. Nobody wanted my help, running their social media. And why should they? 18-year-old kid, no business experience, says that he can make them a bunch of money if they pay me 2K a month. Like, of course they're gonna be like, okay, like, maybe in the future, buddy, circle back, right? And so the best thing that I got from those first couple hundred calls was developing thick skin and learning how to face rejection. And ultimately, I kept researching, I kept learning, and I came across a podcast that was talking about how to, become your true and your authentic self. So not even related to the online business stuff as much, but kind of more overall in self-development and life improvement. And I thought to myself, I was like, maybe this is my problem. I'm calling all these businesses and nobody wants to work with me because I'm kind of lying. Like what I'm doing is I'm wearing a suit and I'm acting all professional and I'm like, I know how to blow up your business with social media and I'm taking this authoritative angle when speaking with the business owners. What if I just dropped the guard and was just completely unfiltered, raw, and 100% myself? And I tried it. Probably less than 5 calls later, I signed my first client ever, which was a roofing contractor company. And the reason why the pitch works so well is because I was vulnerable and I said, look, I'm an 18-year-old kid. I don't have any business experience. I don't have any case studies to show you, but I'm driven. I'm in business school. I will work my ass off to bring leads for your business. And I will, stay up every single night if I have to find a way to make you money. And you don't even have to pay me. I'll do it for free for the first couple weeks. Right. And so when I took that approach and I led with value and I led with authenticity, within 5 calls, I had the first client. And yeah, I wasn't making any money yet, but I had my first client. And then I was like, okay, shit. Now I actually got to learn how to deliver this service. So I started building a Facebook page, the Instagram page, all this stuff. And then I started running lead gen ads on Facebook. And I didn't know a damn thing about Facebook ads. I just dove in headfirst, YouTube tutorials, and I started generating leads for this business. We had a simple form, people would fill out their name, email, phone number, and then I would manually call the leads myself and try to close them for the roofing company. And it worked. It literally worked. Like I was closing, probably 1 or 2 clients a week at about $50 to $70 a day in ad spend. And, these clients, they had a much greater LTV than what we were spending on the ads to acquire them.
Yeah.
And the company was happy. They started paying me, 2.5K a month. And then from there, they referred me to somebody else. And then they referred me to somebody else. And then I hired somebody at UVic to call the rest of the spreadsheet that I had because I was too busy dealing with the clients that I already had. Right. And so, fast forward about 6, 7 months later, we had a little portfolio of about 6 to 7 clients in the agency. Our bread and butter became Facebook lead generation ads, and we were doing $15,000 to $20,000 a month in revenue, probably somewhere between about 5 to 10K a month in profit. And I'm an 18-year-old student in my dorm room running this operation with a couple buddies of mine at UVic that would come by the cluster every day.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess that's kind of the beginning story of how I got into online business and everything.
Wow. So you started that business and you had no idea how to do the service.
No clue. Just dove in head first after I got the first client.
That's awesome. And I think so many people, especially young people who are probably listening to this right now, they're watching all this content like how can I make money online? What's the best business to start? And then I think they're spending so much time productively procrastinating, trying to plan, like get super good at the service first. But then you just dove in head first and like you learned on the go, which I think is one of the best things to do. And something else I noticed in your story, which I really liked, was the trait of resourcefulness. It was like you found the strengths that you had, and then you like all pretty much all across your journey, you were very resourceful with like finding what you had and making the most of it. So where do you think that trait came from?
That's a good question. Um, I think there was a little bit of it looking back on it in the earlier days where I was doing, the reselling stuff and selling things even to kids in elementary school where it's like I knew I didn't have the appetite to make thousands of dollars back then, but I could do something. I could get a little bit of money in the door. I could use my bike. I could, bike across the city. City I grew up in really isn't that big, and I could get these deals done.
Yeah.
And so the same idea in college, I had this little desk in my dorm room, and I had these two monitors set up, and I felt pretty confident behind my computer. And I'm like, let's see if we can do some shit online. Like, the computer kind of became my new sanctuary where everything that was on Google, everything that was on YouTube was all just resources at my disposal. And that's the way that I saw it.
So do you think you always had that kind of confidence and self-belief, or was it something you actually developed?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. There is definitely a little bit of a natural confidence level to some degree. I grew up playing high level sports, so I think that's part of it where, I had to learn how to sort of rise through the ranks and become a better and better soccer player and, get to the better team and then, lead that team to wins and championships and tournaments. Because I was so passionate about that. And I think I sort of hijacked some of my confidence from the soccer days, of course. Uh, but that confidence also got shattered when I had, the worst injury at the peak of my career when I was about 16. So I don't think it was entirely from that. I think, the other part of it was just developed little by little, day in and day out from doing the shit that I said I'm going to do, from sticking to the routine, sticking to the habits. And what's crazy is what's so crazy about the story is that when I was overconfident and I was trying to be someone I'm not, and when I was wearing a suit and when I was acting all professional and lying about previous experience that I had, on social media when I literally had no experience, I was getting no results. But as soon as I dropped that and I said, look, I don't have any experience, but I'm going to figure it out no matter what, which was 100% true. And that's what I did. So as soon as I started being open and honest with where I currently was, that's when other people started to listen. So it wasn't like I had to, necessarily have this big bravado and certain level of confidence. I almost had to go in the other direction and be a little bit more vulnerable in order to secure those early clients and those early wins.
And what one kind of rule that I live by is to be totally delusional about your potential and like where you can be in the future, but then be more realistic. And I I guess kind of playing yourself down about where you are right now. But then thinking like, hey, I can accomplish anything I want. Like I can like develop any skill I want, but right now maybe I'm not quite there.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing mindset. Like I love how there's that aspect of being delusional and sort of, creating the reality that you want for yourself. But then there's also that aspect of like, okay, I have to get shit done. Like I have to, develop these skills. I have to work on myself. I have to move forward every single day because to me, I really think there's no difference between, someone who is exceptionally delusional or overly optimistic and someone who's overly pessimistic. They both they both do the same thing.
Yeah.
When you think about it, someone who's super pessimistic is like, "Oh, this is never gonna work for me. I could never succeed. So why would I even try?" And then they don't do anything. And someone who's extremely delusional and overly optimistic, they just believe that everything is just gonna happen to them and they don't have to do any work. And so they both end up getting nothing done. So if you imagine it as like a spectrum from, pessimistic to optimistic, I think that the optimal range is a healthy level of optimism. So maybe somewhere in here. You want to be delusional. You want to be able to bet on yourself. You want to have conviction in whatever it is that you're doing, but you still have to see reality for what it is. And you have to be like, okay, there's no way I'm just going to wake up tomorrow and $1 million is going to be under my bed because I played with some crystals. You have to show up. You have to put the work in and you have to outwork your competition too. So that's why I think, being delusional is great. But again, as you said, with that healthy level of realism mixed in.
Definitely. And so when you were first starting your agency, what were some of the self-doubts you had or some of kind of the fears and limiting beliefs first going to business?
I would go for these meetings at coffee shops with these business owners, and I would see these people, I would put them on such a pedestal, right?
Right.
I'd be like, wow, like these people have their own business, they have their own physical location, like, they're making all this money, they manage these teams, and who am I? Who am I to be in the room with these people, to be able to, sit down and have these conversations? Um, and so that was kind of weighing on the subconscious. That was tough. And it made me feel pressure. It made me feel nervous. It made me lose my train of thought and have a difficult time speaking and communicating all that I had prepared for these people. But over time, I think, I started to realize through one, working with great clients, and through two, having great mentors, that all these people, regardless if they made, a million, 10 million, a billion, they're just regular people like you and I, right? And so once I actually, well, I was aware of that to some degree, but once I actually experienced that and these people that I put on the pedestal dropped their guard in front of me and had these vulnerable conversations with me, that's when I was kind of able to actually conceptualize that narrative and be like, okay, I'm just like you. And so a mix of that and then watching my favorite creators on YouTube who actually physically were like me because they were, 1 or 2 years older than me. We look the same, we act the same, we're from the same generation, we speak the same slang. So it was a mixture of those two things that kind of made me feel like, okay, if this guy's doing it and making millions, and if these guys are just like me as well, then there's no reason why I can't be in their position if I just do the exact same thing as them.
100%. I think that's been such a great thing that doing this podcast has done for me. It's like by being able to speak to great people and just have these kinds of deep conversations too, and learn more about like people's fears, their limiting beliefs, their self doubts. It's like that really removes the pedestal. It's like, oh shit, this guy is just like me. And then there's the self belief aspect too. It's like if someone who's just like me has achieved all these things that I want to achieve, then it's like, why can't I? So it really makes you believe in yourself so much more.
100%. Yeah. I'm actually curious, you know, to sort of flip the conversation back on you a little bit. What was it that made you go into online business or just business in general? Because you didn't go to UVic, correct?
Oh, no, it is.
But you could have, and you chose not to, and you chose to just pursue business from straight out of high school, right?
Yeah, nice.
So take me through like what was that experience like?
For me, it quite honestly started with me being young and not really having good self-esteem. And I think that came from me just being an only child, and that it was kind of hard for me to develop social skills at a young age, maybe make friends back then. So it was like those early experiences made my self-esteem not that good. Then I was at a point in like middle school, early high school where I literally couldn't look myself in the mirror. And I had all these self-doubts like, oh, I can't play sports very well. I'm not that good at school. Like I'm not that good at anything. So I really felt this drive to find that one thing that I could be great at because like I really don't know what it was, but I just knew like I had in me to do great things. And I always believe in myself. I really don't know where that came from. I think that could have also been just me growing up an only child. So I really had this drive to do something great in life, and then that was when I found business. So I also started off doing the hype reselling, the sneaker selling, and then after that moved into doing detailing. And then funny enough, it was like similar to you with the agency. Like I think I cleaned my car like once or twice, and I posted this thing on some Facebook group. I was like, "Hey, I'm offering car detailing services. Who's interested?" And that was back when I was 17. And then like 20 people messaged me that night, and I was like, oh shit, like I can make some pretty good money doing my own business. And then I think that gave me a lot of early confidence in my business skills. So I I kept doing the detailing business per year and then launched the podcast. And then by doing the podcast, like by being able to speak to people like yourself, and then like some of the other great guests I've had, I've really come to realize like, hey, we're all just the same. We all have fears. We all have limiting beliefs. We've all got self-doubt. So if these people who are just like me, and what's crazy is like I'm starting to meet so many successful entrepreneurs with like such a similar backstory. So it's like if these people just like me can accomplish all these great things, why can't I? And then it gives me no reason not to believe in myself. And then tying into what you were saying too about watching these guys who are only a couple years older than you who are being like super successful at online business, that shows you that there's no reason why you can't be successful either. So after you did the agency, you mentioned you did that for about a year and a half, then you got into drop shipping. So when you first started drop shipping, what were or actually what was just the first thing that made you want to start drop shipping?
One of the clients that I eventually acquired in the agency, they were selling it's not quite dropshipping, they were selling a digital product, but the idea was that, they had this one product and we could scale it infinitely, right, by using paid ads. And so that's when I kind of shifted my focus a little bit from lead gen ads more towards, conversion focused ads on Facebook. And with this one client who was selling this digital product centered around pregnant ladies getting fit again, postpartum,
Yeah.
I remember it was Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, and we did a launch for her new version or updated program, and we did $70,000 in a weekend. And obviously, there was some existing customer assets from her business, but largely that 70,000 came from the marketing and the ads that I did. And that was sort of that unlock where it was, okay, holy shit. Like I just made a life-changing amount of money for this woman in a weekend. Why can't I do that for myself? Because at that point in time, we had a good handful of clients. I was making great money, but it wasn't the type of money that was going to allow me to travel the world, to, you know, buy a car at the drop of a hat, or to, take care of my family and send my parents to Hawaii on vacation. It wasn't that kind of money. It was enough money for me to be comfortable and for me to keep growing and keep progressing and keep going to university. And pay for rent and food and whatever I want and still save a little bit of money on the side. But making five to $10,000 a month in profit is not fuck you money, right? It's just it's good money, don't get me wrong, but it's not that level. But $70,000 in a weekend, that's that next level. Holy fuck. And so I was having this conversation with a client and she was like, "You should seriously do this. Like you should start your own business too." And the more that I thought about it, the more that I was like, "Okay, well where's my current trajectory going?" Right now, yeah, I have 6, 7 clients, but I'm burnt out. It just feels like I have multiple bosses. I'm missing classes. I'm not getting any of my time back. Like, yeah, I have, other people helping me in the business, but at the end of the day, how far can I really scale this? Am I just going to go and get another, 10 clients in Victoria and Vancouver, charge them 2K a month and be burnt the hell out and profit margins are going to shrink? Or am I going to make a pivot? And, I had known about dropshipping. Two of the guys that I was watching a lot at the time was Jordan Welch, Biaheza, actually Sebastian Georgiou as well, if those names ring a bell. Sure. And I was fascinated by their dropshipping stuff. But again, before I didn't know if I was ready for it. But now I was making the money from the agency. I had this nice stream of revenue and profit coming in. And I was like, okay, I'm going to use all this money that I made and I'm going to bet on myself and I'm going to start dropshipping. Because back then, dropshipping wasn't what it was today, right? In order to do one product test, I was looking at least $500, maybe $1,000 plus down the drain just on ad spend, right? And then, there's working with suppliers and there's chargebacks and refunds. And eventually I got scammed $10,000 on an inventory order from a supplier. So the industries came a long way. But yeah, 5, 6 years ago when I first started, you needed more money and it was a much bigger risk. And so that's why I'm fortunate enough to have had the money coming in from the agency where I could actually use that to take the risks of testing new products. And so once I started testing products, same exact thing happened as it always did previously. No success, no results, failure after failure, thousands of dollars down the drain. So that was the first time that my failure was, hitting a little bit differently because previously it was like, yeah, I failed, but I called 100 businesses and no one answered and I just wasted my time, but I didn't waste any money. In this case, it felt like I wasted money. And mind you, I don't think that I wasted money. I don't think that I wasted time at any of these, failures. Because a lot. Yeah, every failure is just that stepping stone that you need for your next unlock. But that's how it felt, and it hits hard because the money that you've worked so hard to make, $1,000 gone like overnight, and then the next product, and then another 1,000 gone, another 1,000 gone. And so the bank account was depleting again. I was also, I had less time to focus on the agency. So shit was kind of falling apart for me. But I knew that it was possible. And I'd been, kind of backed into the corner before when I started the agency. So I was like, I'm going to come out on top. And I think that's where having that proof of already doing something before really comes in. Like the first time, you just got to go in head first. And that's why I believe the best thing as a beginner is to go in head first to something that you're not losing money on because you don't have a lot of money. So the agency was perfect for me. But then once I had a little bit of money, it was like, okay, I could afford to, take this little bit of a risk for a bigger payoff. And long story short, failure after failure, my first real winning product ever. So I had generated a few sales, maybe a few $1,000s, but not profitably. And my first real winning product was UVC sterilization lights. So these were, these wands that you could essentially turn on and you could sort of scan over top of high touch areas like phones, keyboards, anything where germs and virus might be hanging out, even on a table. Right. And so I also got lucky with the market timing because I had started testing this product right before the pandemic broke out. And as soon as the pandemic broke out, what do you think happened?
That's what everyone was looking for, and it was like that product was lost.
Yeah, and I was the first one doing it. So all of a sudden, my Facebook ad campaigns, 4 to 5x return on ad spend on cold campaigns overnight, which is nuts. So essentially, it's like, you put $1 into Zuckerberg's box, and then, he turns around, he opens it up, and you get $5
Oh,
out.
yeah.
And it was a money printer. I kept scaling it, and I was scaling it aggressively,
Yeah.
and the ROAS kept improving because day by day, people were getting more fear. This is what the media was pushing. This is what everyone was talking about all day, every day. And here I was sneaking my Facebook ads in to the mix, telling people, you want to get rid of virus, you want to get rid of germs, buy this product. And it was going fucking crazy. Right. And so after, the first 30 to 45 days, I had over $100,000 on the Shopify dashboard, of which 50% was profit, roughly 50%, because of how crazy the return on ad spend was and because of how cheap the product was to source and ship,
Yeah.
the profits were insane. Yeah, honestly, one of the craziest periods of my life. I still vividly remember opening up my business bank account balance and seeing around $500,000 in there and like losing my shit because that money came so fast, like literally in the span of 90 days or so. And I still do think, part of me wasn't ready to hold that type of capital yet, being effectively, I think I was 19 or maybe I just turned 20. I wasn't really ready for it. Maybe it came a little bit before my time, the money that I was making. And you'll hear why in just a second. Because, one of the things that I started doing about 6 or 7 months into lockdown, once the world reopened a little bit, is I went out and I dripped myself out in like designer clothes. Like I bought every piece that I've ever wanted from when I was in high school, and I would browse, Gucci and Louis and Dior and all this stuff, and I couldn't afford it. I bought every piece, everything that I could have ever wanted, and then I went and I bought a Range Rover in cash, um, and I started treating friends, family, $1,000 dinners, going on trips, or like booking little trips, and just spending the business's revenue like a madman because like I just felt so on top of the world, and this money printer was just going to keep going forever until it wasn't. And I woke up one morning, I rolled over, grabbed my phone, I opened Shopify as I always do to see how much money I made in my sleep. $0. I'm tripping. I'm like running out of my bed, getting to my computer, logging into Shopify, all my emails. And at the top of my email inbox is an email from Shopify with a cease and desist. So my store was shut down and it could not be brought back. And the reason why it was shut down was because I was using stolen content. So content that I had literally just scraped from all over the internet, in my website, in my ads, everywhere. And, luckily it didn't get to a point where I had to, pay for any of the damages that I may have caused, other businesses or other people who were trying to sell similar products. But what happened after that was I started to get, a little bit of refunds because we had processed so many orders, a little bit of chargebacks coming through, and I already spent a ton of money, like a ton of money. And so chargebacks coming through, refunds coming through, and to top it all off, my supplier ran out of inventory for some of the more recent orders. So I was scrambling. I found another supplier, and they scammed me out of multiple five figures.
Boy.
So they ghosted me after I paid, after I sent the wire, and I couldn't get the inventory. That product was going crazy now. Other dropshippers were catching on to it, and so I had to refund like hundreds of orders. And this moment hit me so hard because I went from being on top of the world to showing off to friends, family, everybody around me that I was that guy that I was trying to be for so long, and I was finally making thousands of dollars a day passively in my sleep, and I had I had to go to people, and I had to tell them, like, "Look, this shit's coming crumbling down in my face." And I couldn't do it. I literally couldn't do it. Like, for me, that was so hard to, you know, go to my parents, to go to the closest people in my life and explain the situation that I was in, because they didn't really believe me from the jump anyway. And I'd finally started to convince them that I was able to do this, that I was making money, that I was succeeding. And my parents were finally coming around. They were like, okay, maybe you actually can do this. Like, I can't believe, you bought your car and all this stuff. And now I'm in a position where everything is crumbling. All this money is just getting depleted. So I went from making thousands a day to losing hundreds a day, maybe thousands a day. And that money was going fast. And I already spent a lot of it too. And I wasn't even thinking about taxes either. And so, all said and done, I was pretty close back to where I was before. Like, I was lucky that, I came out on top. I had a bit of extra money. I had, now some extra materialistic items, cars and things. But but it was tough. And I remember getting an email, because I think this was towards the end of the summer. I remember getting an email from UVic, and it was talking about, the next year and the co-ops and the co-op opportunities. And I was browsing the co-op opportunities, and this shit was like $16 an hour, $13 an hour. A good experience, whatever. But like, I was just like, bruh, like, I went from making thousands of dollars a day, and now I'm looking at my old life and potentially like, browsing co-op opportunities. And I'm like, yeah, that shit's never gonna happen. I close the laptop. I'm like, I'm not doing this co-op nonsense. I've done it once before. I can do it again. So I start dropshipping again. I start testing new products. And this time I learn from my mistakes. I start searching for royalty-free content. Um, finding different places where I'm ensuring that the stuff that I'm using isn't stolen or doesn't belong to someone else. And I'm even starting to build a little bit of a team. So I had a virtual assistant, and I'm training her on more tasks, and I'm making her help me with product research and all this stuff. And you know, long story short, a few months later, I had another couple products pop off. One of the other products that popped off was color changing swim shorts. Funny little product, but when it goes in water, they change color, and the creatives for it came up so cool. So I think that's why it did so well. And so that was a big winner for me. And then I was selling these heated gloves come the winter time. We expanded on the store. We sold, heated shirts, heated jackets, heated hats, and it was called Flame Apparel. And we have, this whole range and this whole line of heated products. And scaled that store to about 6 figures a month as well. The swim short store to, I think it was about $70 to $80,000 a month at the peak. So we had a couple of different stores going, and we were always testing different products. And this time I was a lot smarter, and I was like not, putting all my eggs in one basket. And I had multiple stores where I was building up a little bit of a team, and it was a little slower this time, but the money was coming in. And around that time was when I posted my first video ever on YouTube. And the reason for that was I grew up on YouTube. Like, I loved watching, Logan Paul vlogs and Casey Neistat and, all these guys. And I just thought it was so cool that, like, you as an individual could film a video on your phone or camera, post it on the internet, and impact thousands, potentially millions of people could see what you created. So I loved YouTube. I loved, the creative aspect of it. And I had tried it. I had tried a sports channel when I was younger. I tried a prank channel in high school with my friend. Everyone laughed at us. Uh, but nothing really stuck, because I just never I just never had anybody watching apart from people who were laughing at us or friends or my mom. Those are the only people watching my videos. And I made a lot of videos over the years, like probably like 200, 300,
Yeah.
never got any exposure. And so, you know, that was my early experience with content creation in YouTube. But when I was about 16 or 17 and I decided to stop doing the prank channel on YouTube and stuff, I remember telling myself that one day when I have something valuable enough to talk about or share,
Yeah.
I will return to YouTube.
Yeah.
And so now I'm 20 years old. I'm making six figures a month. And an idea goes off in my head. I'm like, yo, this is pretty fucking cool. You know, I'm 20 years old making six figures a month.
100%.
Let's open a YouTube channel. So the first ever channel that I did, I just tested another product. I made it into a dropshipping challenge.
Yeah.
Complete flop. No one watched it. Just a mom, as usual.
Yeah.
But this time I knew that it would only be a matter of time before I'd succeed because I had built up that mindset from the agency, from dropshipping, from everything. So I set myself a strict, like I would call it a goal, but it was more of a system. I said every single week for the next 50 weeks, so a year, I have to upload a video on my channel. And that's what I do. 10 weeks go by, 15 weeks go by, no one's really watching. Maybe 20 weeks in, video starts to pick up, audience starts to trickle down to old videos. 30 weeks in, 40 weeks in, 5,000 subscribers, 10,000 subscribers. A year goes by. I'm reflecting on the channel. It's at about 30,000 subscribers, about 5,000 a month in AdSense revenue, about 10 or 15 grand a month in affiliate revenue and partnership revenue, and a bunch of people following me on Instagram. I'm building my network. I'm making connections. People are asking for my help. And I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to continue with this YouTube thing. Like, I'm glad I gave this a whole year and I stuck to it because now it's finally working and I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, then that second year is where, I kind of started to shift more time and effort towards YouTube and content creation. And through that, hundreds of DMs coming in a day, people wanting help. I took in a couple people one-on-one. I helped them see success with dropshipping. Then I hired them as coaches. I built out the coaching company. We grew that. That year we did $2 million in revenue with the coaching company. The next year we did 3 million. Then we shut the coaching company down. But that was an amazing, that info product was an amazing period of my life for those 2 years where I made so many cool connections. I worked closely with so many cool clients that are now my friends, to this day. A couple of them, came by the new crib already. We hang out, we work, we chop it up. Some of these guys have long surpassed me, doing millions of dollars a month, even with their e-commerce brands. And these were guys that, I had initially helped 4 years ago now. And it's so cool. Like, I'm so thankful that I did coaching for a while and I built that company up because that was awesome. But then, it came to a point where I stepped away from coaching because I needed more time for my other ventures. So affiliate marketing was, one of the things that we were doing very large scale as well. We've done millions of dollars with affiliate marketing for some of the biggest companies in the e-commerce sector as well. That's something that I'm still doing to this day. E-com is something that I'm still doing to this day. And then, content creation is something that I'm still doing to this day as well. So yeah, those were kind of the early years and the dropshipping success that ultimately led me to where I am now.
Yeah, so I'd love to get into more of the personal branding, the info side, but so I want to go back to more drop shipping, dive into that a little more. And something else I want to bring up before that is what you're saying about you're running the agency, so you're making the money from the agency and putting that into drop shipping. So my last podcast was actually with Andrew Wilkinson. That's like billionaire guy who's done so well. If anyone who's listening doesn't know who he is, but something really big that he talks about is how important it is to have kind of a launchpad business, like run some kind of service and then get the money from that, to then funnel into other businesses and then do something more scalable. So I see that was what you did with your agency. So that was kind of like your launchpad business, and then it gave you the money, and then more important, the ability to do drop shipping and be able to play around more with that. So I think just from an outsider looking in, like that was a huge factor to your success in drop shipping, having that agency and then having that existing capital. So what do you think were some of the other big factors in your drop shipping success that maybe you don't talk about very often or aren't aren't very talked about in the whole dropshipping space.
1,000%. First of all, I love that take from Andrew and, the idea of having this launchpad business because that's exactly what I did. I would say that's even still what I'm doing to this day.
Right.
Because when I look at my career as a whole and I look at where I'm going, I really realize that at each stage of business and each stage of knowledge or intelligence, capital, connections, different opportunities will unlock.
Yeah.
And you don't have access to take those opportunities until you're at a certain stage. Now I'm doing real estate, I'm investing in film, I'm doing, investing in e-commerce companies. I didn't have the money, the experience, the connections, anything to be able to do this before.
Sure.
They just sort of unlocked later on in my journey. And I really think that you need to be honest and you need to be real with yourself and ask yourself, what do I currently have the appetite for?
Right.
And what is the best vehicle that I can be in to deploy my current knowledge, skill sets, capital, and connections?
Total.
And so at the time, way back when for me, it was agency. And then it was dropshipping. And then it was content and coaching and then affiliate. And then, now I'm fortunate enough to be sitting on what I'm sitting on at, 2024, almost 25. And I truly feel like the opportunities are starting to become endless. And, the best analogy is like, you could, you could get on a bus and the first half of the bus ride, there's no stops. And in the second half, there starts to be more stops. And in the final quarter, there's a lot more stops and a lot more directions and different buses you can take.
Yeah.
And so in the beginning, I really think that the blueprint is so simple. The formula is there for anyone who wants to take it and go from zero to, we say 10K a month. That's kind of like the industry standard. I like, that I made it. I started making good money. So we'll say 10K a month. You follow a simple, proven process that a million people have followed. You ride that bus to the 10K a month stop, and then a couple more options open up for you.
Yeah.
Then you take a different path, right? And you ride that bus to the 50K a month, to the 100K a month. Then, all of a sudden, when you have millions of dollars and you have a great network and you have a personal brand and you have all these things, now you have so many different paths you can take.
Yeah.
And it's so cool, but it's also overwhelming.
Yeah.
It was so much, my life was so much simpler and easier when I was at square one because there was only one path to take. And I could literally just copy somebody's exact steps. But now, people who have been in my position have all taken so many different directions to get to the next stage. So who do I want to be like? And I don't think it's a matter of me picking someone and following their steps anymore. I think at my current stage, it's like, I have to get more in tune with myself and what do I value and where do I want to go and how do I want my life to look in 5 years and 10 years. And so naturally, as my career has progressed, I've become a lot more introspective.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of time journaling and thinking and meditating and reading and talking to people and trying to really understand myself in order to figure out what that next unlock is and what that looks like. And so, to answer the other question with dropshipping, I think, gosh, from when I started to today, the landscape is so different, right? And today, I mean, you can get started dropshipping in a couple of hours. Like we have free courses, free softwares, free resources. You can open a store on Build Your Store in 5 minutes that's fully fleshed out, winning products added to the store by AI,
Yeah.
and everything is just set up. Now, of course, like you want to edit the store, you want to learn about consumer psychology, you want to adapt the landing page, you want to figure out your customer avatar, and you need to get really good at marketing and creating great creatives that resonate with that avatar, testing different angles, all of these things. but the barrier to entry is now on the floor. Like, it's, you know, I like to say that the walls to the castle are much lower now, but the distance to the throne is much farther. Because when everybody can get in, it's like those who are gonna be successful and rise to the top have to be exceptional. You have to get something different. Versus in the past, let's say 7 years ago at dropshipping, the walls to the castle were very high. Like, it wasn't that easy to just start a store out of thin air and, like, have a supplier hooked up and find the source the product, ship the product in a reasonable time and not have to deal with chargebacks and refunds and all this nonsense. So the walls to the castle were high, but as soon as you get in, you were making tons of money. Now the walls to the castle are you can walk right in and start dropshipping today, but you need skills to be able to, make a ton of money. And so that's what I talk about now a lot in content. It's like all these business models work. Whether you want to do drop shipping, whether you want to, start an agency, whether you want to do detailing, whatever it is, they all work. You can all make a ton of money. You can all, use these vehicles as great launchpad businesses.
Yeah.
But you do have to develop skills, and and AI is not going to do everything for you. You have to be able to critically think. You have to be able to look at things from different perspectives. You have to be a great marketer, or you have to have something unique that you're developing and you're honing in on so that you can win amongst the other thousands of people that are flooding into all of these business models every single day. Right?
Yeah, what you were saying before, where it was like there's different things that get you to 0 to 10K a month, and then 10K to 100K a month. It's like the saying, what got you here won't get you there. Like the things that got you to 10K a month aren't going to be the things that get you from like 100K, 400K a month to a million a month or the next place that you want to go. So, what do you think were some of those skills or maybe some of those traits that did get you from the 0 to 10K range, but you had to kind of let go of to get to 100K a month and beyond?
The biggest thing I can tell you right off the bat is 0 to 10K a month, you want to be a yes man. You want to, every opportunity that comes knocking, yes, 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 I'll try it. I'll run your ads. I'll build your website. I'll scale your stuff. I'll make you money. You want to be a madman of that, calling people, knocking on everyone's door, doing whatever it takes to, sign more clients or to test more products or whatever vehicle you're in. You want to say yes to everything though, because something will pan out and you will get there, right? But let's say 10K to, all the way to 100K a month and beyond, that is a territory where it's less about saying yes and it's actually more about saying no. Because when you're at 10K a month and you have a business, you have a skill stack that people want and they want to pay you for it, all of a sudden, as we talked about earlier, you have so much more opportunities.
Yeah.
And I mean, one, it would be physically impossible for you to say yes to every single opportunity possible that you can take at that point. But two, you have minimal leverage saying yes to every single opportunity. And minimal leverage in the beginning is fine. You have to put those years or those time of sweat equity in to get from 0 to 10K a month. But to get from 10 to 100K, you need leverage.
Yeah.
Right. And leverage can come in so many different forms. But one of the best things to do at that stage is to evaluate, what is the actual best opportunity for me, given my current income level, given my current experience, given the people that I currently know. And again, in my situation at 10K a month, dropshipping was that next best unlock to get to 100K. Correct. Well, nowadays you can start dropshipping with 0, but back then, remember, it was like you needed to have some money to dropship. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to run Facebook ads because there was no TikTok organic. There was none of this. And so it was like, okay, now that I'm at 10K a month, let's start spending this 10K a month on ads and let's keep testing products until we find a winner. But for, somebody today, that might look completely different. The 10K a month that they're making now, let's say from, an agency, might go into a different business and then they spend 10K a month, that 10K a month they're making in ads to get to that next unlock. Because I do think, at every stage you have to spend money to make money. In the beginning, you don't, and you shouldn't because, otherwise you can get into a bunch of debt, and there are a bunch of great online business, entry level models for you to get into without spending money.
Yeah.
But I can't really think of a single person who went from 10K a month to 100K a month sustainably without spending a dollar. Because at that stage, you're building teams, you're acquiring specific pieces of knowledge, you're reinvesting back into yourself, you're buying mentorships, you're buying programs, even something as simple as you're upgrading your lifestyle to be in an environment where making more money is possible. So maybe you're moving to a nicer part of your city or you're moving to a bigger city with more opportunities. And I really don't think those things are to be overlooked either, right? Like I told you this off camera, but now I'm living in, arguably the most expensive building in the entire downtown, right? And so the moment I moved into this building, I met a founder worth 9 figures in the lobby in an industry that I am planning on entering into.
Yeah.
And so that one connection could go on to make me tens of millions or more in my entire, trajectory of my career and my life. And that wouldn't have been possible if I didn't push the boundaries and move from where I was before to, this new location with more abundance, more wealth, and people around me. So that's why I think that, everything just kind of comes in stages. And as you have more money, more experience, more knowledge, doors will start swinging open for you. And your job is to identify what's the best door to walk into right now and what do I have the appetite for that'll get me from where I currently are to the next stage. And don't try to skip stages. And this is what I fundamentally don't like about business school.
Yeah.
I went to business school for 5 years. And all we did, I swear, was learn case studies about Nvidia, Google, Meta, and it's like, okay, these are multi-billion, trillion-dollar companies, and we're studying them. But none of us sitting in this room have the appetite to go ahead and start this business. It's backwards. Business school should be teaching us how to open a laundromat, how to open a car wash, how to do a lemonade stand, how to do car detailing, how to start drop shipping even, right? This is what we should be learning in business school because Elon Musk didn't start his entrepreneurial journey by sending rockets to fucking Mars. No, it all happens in stages. Every single entrepreneur, unless they come from millions of dollars or they have crazy connections or, some exceptional case. But why are we studying the exceptional cases? There's no point of doing that because all of us in the room don't have the same opportunity as the exceptions do. That's why they're exceptions. They're outliers. So we should build our business and take our career in stages. And that I'm a big believer in that. And, going back to business school, I dropped out and then I went back to finish it. I had this conversation with the heads of the program. Like we sat down and they asked me for feedback on their program. And this was the number one piece of advice I said to them. I said, a lot of what we're doing is fundamentally useless
Yeah.
because there's so many stages that we are skipping past and we are studying, little bits and pieces of companies that none of us have the appetite to run yet. When one of us could very well go and start making 10K a month, with a small car washing business first.
Yeah.
But we don't know how to do that because you guys aren't teaching us that. So then what happens is, after business school, we try something, we fail, and then we go work a 9 to 5 because we're like, damn, this entrepreneurship shit is tough. Of course it's tough. You're trying to build $1 billion company when you haven't made 10K a month yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was the biggest flaw in business school for me, and that's something that I guess I really only learned and experienced through trial and error and through, taking it upon myself to start my own businesses.
Well, that really ties into it is something I was learning about earlier called the survivorship bias. It's basically like we only see the successful case of something. Like for example, with the big companies, I think it's taught in business school and like the common business like people who are studying businesses usually study like the startups and like the businesses that are like trying to make it big and make billions of dollars. And then they see companies like Google and Facebook and they're like, and then it's like all they see are the super successful ones. But then they don't see like the 99% that tried to get to that level, but then just went into a ton of debt and failed. But then I think if people just switch their perspective more and then start looking at like the car detailing companies or like the agencies, the drop shipping companies, the ones where it's like the success rate's much higher, and then go and start one of those, and then get their first bit of success doing something that's actually been proven to work. One of those businesses where it's like it's not does it work, it's more like how well can you make it work. They're gonna be doing so much better than it's like if they only look at the super free cases and the startups and then try and go in that direction.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, 100%. So after the drop shipping that he went into more personal branding and info, what so when you first started making YouTube content and then starting your personal brand, what were some of the fears and some of the limiting beliefs you had about content and about info that turned out not to be true?
Yeah, so, I'll say when I started posting on YouTube, which I think is about 4.5 years ago now, back then, the info space was tiny, not what it is today. There was, very few people doing it. I didn't know that starting a personal brand, starting a YouTube channel would result in making as much money as I did from it.
Yeah.
I did it because I was passionate about it. And again, I gave you the backstory truly because YouTube had always been something I wanted to do. But, a year into it, I started to realize this is a whole other business. We have AdSense revenue, we have partnerships, we have affiliate revenue, we have uh, the networking capabilities, we have this personal brand that's growing and people following me on Instagram and wanting help. And then I realized through the help that I can coach these people and I can take money for it. And then I can build this coaching program into something bigger where we can coach hundreds of people at once. And so it kind of just happened very naturally for me as I sort of grew with the whole info industry and the whole personal branding industry. And it's kind of funny because it kind of makes me feel like quite old in the space now because I was around, I haven't been around for as long as, Emon or as long as, the real OGs like
Right.
Rai Lopez and Grant Cardone's and all these guys. But I've been around for a long time in relativity to all these new Gen Z entrepreneurs or ID info and content. What's that? Yeah, on status, I guess. So, yeah, it was a very interesting journey in terms of like limiting beliefs and, the fears of starting with all this stuff. Of course, it's scary, putting yourself out there, but something that allowed me to kind of push through that was one, the previous experience from starting YouTube channels in the past, which allowed me to deal with the criticism and the negative comments, the friends laughing, and the family taking the piss, all these things. And I had faced that again when I did dropshipping, when I did agency, when I did all this stuff. So to me, at this point, it was nothing new. It was just just like everything else. But it was still tough because now, my face is out there, it's online, all these people can see it. And it's a little bit different than, running a dropshipping store behind the scenes where no one really knows what you're doing or how much money you're making. Cause now you're right out in the open. But it was a cool experience. You know, I think that if I didn't have a passion for content creation and for getting in front of the camera and for sharing my opinion and for speaking and for uh, impacting others and helping people, helping a younger version of myself, it wouldn't be worth it and I wouldn't do it. And it's not to say that, content and personal branding is a bad opportunity. I think it's actually one of the greatest opportunities for people of our age in our time.
Yeah.
But I think that with my skill set, I would just focus on media buying. I would just focus on, marketing and landing pages and affiliate marketing and e-commerce and dropshipping behind the scenes if I didn't have the passion for being in front of the camera as well. But because I did, and because it's always something I knew I wanted to do, then that kept pushing me forward. And the thing is with personal branding, it's not easy. It's arguably more challenging than any other skill that I've picked up or any other business model that I've delved into and made
Real.
money with, yeah. And the reason for that, I mean, one, there's a lot of competition, so there's a lot of people fighting for attention online and trying to get views and trying to get followers and trying to make money off their content and all these things, of course. But, of course, you have to overcome your limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to be authentic. You have to learn how to show up on camera. You have to learn how to get vulnerable, how to share your opinions. And it's kind of like a culmination of skills that are all coming together because it, it's not just, sit behind the computer and run some ads. And if you're good at, probability and statistics and reading numbers and reading data, then you'll succeed. It's like, no, you have to be good at yeah, the number stuff because analytics behind the content, but you also have to be good about the creative stuff, right? Because you have to create things that people want to see. And at the end of the day, it's humans watching your stuff. It's not just an algorithm. You're creating this for other people who are actually there watching, who are there listening to every word you have to say. Yeah. So there's the creative part of it, there's the analytical part of it, and then there's also the mindset part of it, which is, that stops a lot of people limiting beliefs around content and putting themselves out there. So these are three big sort of hurdles and, three big things that you have to overcome and get quite good at. And it's also endless. Like, by no means am I where I want to be with content creation yet. There's so many things you can work on, from the speaking to the packaging to the ideation to the scripting to, your delivery to all the different platforms that we have now to post on. It's crazy. It's an unfathomable, unbelievable amount of stuff that you have to stay on top of. And not to mention the landscape is changing so much and so fast with all these AI tools, and you're competing against creators that are literally spending millions of dollars with massive teams behind them to pump out content, and that's your competition. So I think, would I recommend personal branding? Absolutely. I think you need to find an approach that's unique and authentic to you. I think you need to, uh, learn the skill of creating great videos, great pieces of content. You need to learn the behind the scenes of it, the analytics of it. You need to learn how to show up on camera, how to be presentable, how to speak well, all of these things. But it is really worth it because you don't just get financial gain. You get, connections that can last a lifetime, that can change your life. You get opportunities you never would have thought of coming your way. You get to sit down and have great conversation like we are today, with people like yourself and on podcasts and all these sorts of things that never would have been there if I didn't pick up that camera and start creating, content and building this personal brand. And I'm sure same for you as well.
Okay, so something that you said that I found really interesting was you learn to be authentic.
Yeah, for sure. So when you first start creating content, maybe you've experienced this. I certainly have. It's a weird experience looking down the lens of that camera and talking to it. Like in a podcast, I'm looking at you, I'm talking to you. So I think inevitably it's a bit easier to sort of have that conversation flowing because obviously you're a real person. We're having conversation, but when I'm looking over at the lens, that ain't a real person. Like it causes some kind of anxiety to just stare into a lens and speak to it. But obviously, great content, great authentic content is when you treat the camera lens as your ICP or as your friend, and you're having that very natural and smooth conversation. And so I really don't think that's something that, I mean, maybe there are exceptional cases, but I think for the majority of us, that's probably not something that we're born with. We're not able to look down the lens of a camera and instantly be as authentic as we are when we're talking to one another as humans, because we can read each other. Like, yeah, I can see your facial expressions, your body language, your eye contact. I can see when you're about to speak next. And all these things, subconsciously allow me to communicate better with you because we grow up our whole lives interacting with one another. But when we look in the lens, completely different experience. So I think for me, it's like when I first turned on that camera, there was some fear, there was some anxiety with that. There was also a bit of concern with, the conflicting types of people that are watching the content because and this is something I still struggle with. That's why I think it's something that you learn and you develop over time and you continually get better at. Because even now, when I look down the camera lens, I kind of see like my mom, my friends, my dog. I see everyone because I know eventually know that like all sorts of different people will be watching the video. And so it's like I have these thoughts, okay, how should I say things and how should I put it in a way that won't offend people? Or, am I coming across as egotistical, or do I sound like this rich asshole sitting here on my high horse kind of thing with the content? And all these things just flooding my mind that don't allow me to talk the same way that I would when I'm talking with, say, my best friend in the living room. And that's the level of authenticity that you want to show up on camera, is as if you're talking to your best friend in your living room. And so, yeah, it's been a process for sure. I have a speaking coach. I work with him weekly. We cover all different types of stuff from, the pitch in the voice to the emotional range to eye contact to facial expressions to gestures to pausing, slowing down, really formulating my thoughts before speaking. These are all so many different components that go into speaking and delivery and speaking on camera too. And then you've got teleprompters, or do you not use a teleprompter? When do you improv? When do you go off script? When do you stay on script? So there really is so many things that you can be working on when it comes to how to be a better speaker, and also specifically how to be a better content creator. And yeah, one of the biggest and most challenging things for me throughout my journey has been, how do I show up as my authentic self? And it's harder than what it may seem.
Yeah, and I find that so interesting because we were speaking a bit before the podcast. Like a lot of issues with speaking or maybe fear, hesitation on camera. A lot of that doesn't really have to do with it being a bad speaker or not having like the speaking skills. It's more like your limiting beliefs, and so much of it's psychological. And there's this quote I remember hearing a couple years ago. It was like, you don't build confidence. Like, you don't become more confident by adding more things in. You build confidence by removing insecurities and getting rid of those limiting beliefs. Like, for example, speaking to the camera and like thinking other people are hearing it, other people are judging you. And it's like you build true confidence by working on those limiting beliefs and like those things that you might believe, and like they're like you've believed them for so long that like they're so ingrained in your psychology and just like unconscious at this point. So what do you think some of those were for you? Like, what do you think some of those like unconscious limiting beliefs were that you only just discovered?
I wouldn't quite call it imposter syndrome, but it's pretty close. I struggled with this limiting belief where I felt like, because I'm not where I want to be, or because there is a greater expert in the field than me, then I'm not validated enough to speak on this topic to the fullest degree that I want to speak on it. So I'd kind of hold back and I would kind of censor my raw takes and my harsh opinions and, what I really think. And naturally those opinions would come out, but they'd only come out with the best friend in the living room. They wouldn't come out on camera because of that limiting belief that I'm not where I want to be yet. There's people, more qualified people who can be having this conversation and deploying their opinion. So I should kind of, you know, pull back a bit and not, be as aggressive or be as truly me as I wanted to be.
What were some of those harsh opinions?
Yeah. So I would say, you know, in e-commerce specifically, different technical things or different things that I believe in
Yeah.
that would allow you to have more success with your business. But also outside of that, in terms of life, like, you know, people ask me personal finance questions, opinions on wealth preservation, or how to grow your capital, how to make investments, how to deploy your money. And I have, a certain set of beliefs that I'd say, I would follow by. But I mean, even now, it's hard for me to kind of like say it because I'm like, oh, there's better, there's better and bigger wealth experts that can talk about this. But one of these things is, I actually feel that getting wealthy isn't as as difficult and as nuanced as people make it out to believe.
Need to go deeper into that.
Very, very simple from a purely numbers and analytical standpoint. And they don't teach this in school because they don't teach financial literacy in school. But when you understand that the more money you have, the more money you make, then your only goal should be getting the cash flow and then deploying that into places that are going to continually make you money. And so when you look at the compound interest calculator, which you can find online, you just Google it, it's surprisingly shocking how many people don't understand this. But, let's say the S&P 500 on average has returned about 10% over the past, I don't know, 100 years, right? Well, maybe 7 to 8% adjusted for inflation.
Yeah.
So hypothetically, if you are, the age of 18 and you're able to invest $2,000 a month or $3,000 a month every single month for the rest of your life, or until you're 40 or until you're 50, that principal has now become millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars even, because of compound interest and because of time value of money and your time in the market from the age that you are. And this stuff is so simple to me because I've studied it outside of school, but they don't teach that. You have to go and learn that for yourself. You have to read books about personal finance, about wealth, about financial literacy to understand truly how powerful time value of money it is and how easy it actually is to build wealth with the right strategy.
Right.
And so these are things where it's like, I could go on and on about how simple it is and how effective it is to create a plan for yourself financially and to deploy that and bring that into fruition, and the different stages that it would take to get to different levels of income, to get to different levels of wealth, and what you should do at each stage. But again, these are things that I kind of pull back on because I'm like, yeah, I have strong opinions. I know what I'm talking about. It works for me. But at the end of the day, I'm not a wealth expert. I'm not, this is not financial advice. So then I get in my head about like, I don't think I should be giving financial advice. I should talk about, the technical side of things. I should talk about e-com. I should talk about, these certain lived experiences that I have rather than my philosophies about my own life and my future. So that's something where it's kind of like, I tend to steer towards, okay, what have I done? Let's talk about that. What am I currently doing? Let's talk about that. Um, and let's give value there, when I really think there's a whole other unlock for me in content about my philosophies and the way that I think about my life, whether that be in business, whether that be in relationships, and in all these different aspects. But I don't really share that as much because the limiting belief thing.
Man, I love hearing about this stuff, and something I want to add, like a perspective I want to share in terms of like having people who are ahead of you, not really feeling like you're an expert in personal finances. Like you've done so well financially, like to a point where people dream of. And in terms of money, it's like there's always gonna be someone who's richer than you. Like someone's always gonna be more successful than you, and like in literally any field. So it's like where does that end? You know what I'm saying?
Science, where do you draw the line? Because
Exactly.
no matter how much money you could make in your entire life, there's always going to be a bigger boat. There's always going to be a bigger house. There's always going to be a bigger business. Like, it's just, it's crazy. I think Drake said it at one point. He had rented the biggest possible yacht. I think it was in Monaco, and he was partying. And he looks over and there's like a Saudi prince on a yacht that's like 3 times the size. He'd never seen the yacht that big in his life. And that's when he realized that like even Drake is like there's levels to the game. That's what he said. So it's just crazy because like we think of, people like Drake as like the top. Like where do you go from like Drake level money and status and whatever? But even for him, he's like, oh shit, like I'm nothing compared to this guy or that guy. And there will always be that because at every level, you then get exposed to more. So, when I was first starting, I thought 10K a month would be all I would ever need for the rest of my life and I would be so happy, right?
Yeah.
But then I quickly realized that all these other guys are doing 100K a month. And then I got to 100K a month. And then I realized, all these other guys are doing quarter mil a month and 500K a month and a million a month. And it's just like, again, where do you draw the line? You don't. And I think there's also a weird freeing feeling about that because it's like, okay, the levels are really endless on how high I can climb in business and wealth and anything in life. Uh, and that, that is something that gives me a sense of peace almost because it's like I'm only competing with myself. Because if I try to compete against somebody else, that's suicidal because once I get to their level or even I outdo them, that somebody else is just gonna change to the next person, and I'm gonna go my whole life unhappy and feeling behind and feeling like nothing compared to, the guy over here. So why do that to yourself, right? And I think that's something that it's easier said than done. Again, it's something to develop, but I've really been working on that a lot over the past, I'd say, year or two, where it's like, all right, Nate, the competition is literally in the mirror. That's it. Like, I'm not going to compare myself to anybody else. And it's hard. It's so easy as humans to judge, to want to see where you fit in, to see where you are, in relativity to peers or other people you see online. Um, but at the end of the day, we're all just these tiny little insignificant organisms on this floating rock amidst billions and billions of miles of God knows what outside of our universe. And so, why are we spending our entire life unhappy and chasing after something that we may or may not hit when we can just enjoy and fall in love with the day to day process of improving and getting better than we were yesterday?
How do you define success?
For me, if I could define success, it would be getting to spend every single day with the people that I love and care about the most, and all of us be in good health and laughing our asses off. That's it. Like, that's literally it. Like, of all the success, the accomplishments, the achievements, at the end of the day, that is the real why behind everything. Like, I just wanna be happy. I want my people to be taken care of, to be happy. I wanna enjoy this time that we have in this world and in this life that we've been given, and I don't wanna stop laughing. I wanna laugh through it all, and I wanna love my life. And if I can make that a reality through business, through making money, through building relationships, through building a network, through personal development, self-development, growth, then that's all I need.
Do you think that definition was changed over time?
I think it has mentally. Here's the thing. I think the definition has always been the same and it's always been inside of me, but it's just taken longer to formulate into words what that really is. Because, it's just like it took a lot of reflection and a lot of journaling and a lot of moments of silence and just thinking to myself and what do I value to realize that true success for me is being happy, healthy, and spending my time with the people I love and them being happy and healthy too. That's it. But I wouldn't have arrived there if I didn't have all these other definitions and all these other things that I thought previously, because it's like a domino effect, right? And maybe there's another layer that I will get to eventually. But I feel like I've been knocking down the dominoes, and then that last one standing is my current definition. And maybe there's more behind it, but what I'm saying is like, when I was 18, I thought that buying a Rolex and moving to an apartment in the city would make me happy. I did that, and the Rolex was cool, it was dope, don't get me wrong, my first, nice watch. Uh, I don't even wear it anymore, like, I barely wear that thing, it just sits in my closet, collecting dust. It's a cool piece in the sense that when I look at it, it reminds me of, you know, everything that I had to go through to get to that point. But the material item itself gives me no happiness and no better quality of life compared to sitting around a campfire with my closest friends and just chatting shit and laughing. That is what truly makes me feel successful, happy, and everything in between.
And something you said there that I love was back when you were 18, like you had a different definition of success, and then like you had so many different definitions and things that you wanted that then you went out and achieved those things and you realized like that wasn't what you wanted in the first place. I forget who said it, but I remember I heard somewhere that like, you're gonna have so many false purposes in your life, and then you owe it to yourself to go out and, like, pursue those false purposes, realize you don't want them, and then finally discover what your real purpose is, but it's like you only discover that real purpose by chasing all those false purposes. So, this brings me to something you posted on your Instagram about a month ago that I found super interesting. So it was a review of your year, and you said, "In 2025, you shut down a $3 million a year info business, and you found real purpose in your work. You developed a real relationship with yourself and your inner world, which was probably the biggest win the entire year, and you strengthened your relationships with family, friends, and your girlfriends, set some goals so big that it scared you, and then a few more things as well. And I really want you to dive into that. So, the first one being you shut down your $3 million a year business and you found real purpose in your work.
Yeah, so that was what I was talking about before with shutting down the info company. We shut that down in 2024. We kind of came back to it a little bit, and by the beginning of 2025, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. Um, and it's from the standpoint of like, again, I really enjoyed it. I had a great time for what it was worth for the couple years when we ran that company. Again, we made a lot of money in that company. We impacted a lot of people. We changed a lot of people's lives, even the people on my team, people we worked with. Great. But it got to a point where it was just soul sucking. Like, I was having to wake up every single day. I was having to get on, these group calls, these one-on-one calls, and I was having to, explain the same things over and over and over again uh, to different people. And although that was great and I could see the impact happening in real time, I wasn't really paying attention to how I was feeling throughout that process.
That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was feeling burnt out. I was feeling less energy than when I started. I was struggling to provide the same impact that I wanted to provide as when I started because it's exhausting, man. Like trying to coach hundreds or thousands of people at once. Um you could do it, and some people do it exceptionally well, but it reached a point for me where I was like, "You know what? My YouTube videos are gonna be good enough. We can put that out there, and we can inspire thousands or millions of people, and, share my opinions, share my advice." And in terms of, like, you know, my actual time on calls and with people, I wanna be talking about and doing the stuff that is lighting me up and making me really, really excited. And so it got to a point where, spending all this time one on one or one to many with beginners, teaching them the bare basics of dropshipping got exhausting. And so now it's so cool because part of my purpose, I feel like, and part of the enjoyment I get from my work is dynamic and it's always evolving and it's always growing and being able to have interesting conversations about new industries and emerging markets and taking advantage of unique things with AI. These are the kind of things that make me really excited to show up to work and have conversations with good team members, good colleagues, good business partners. And I wasn't able to fully, dive into this passion and this enjoyment for the love of, progressing and learning about all these different things because I had put myself in a box and all that I could do was essentially talk about the same things with, that business. And so that's why I got to a point where I was like, you know, I'll talk about this stuff on YouTube. I still enjoy it there and it impacts people at scale, but I can't do the coaching side of it anymore. We have to we have to move on, and that will give me more time to work on these other ventures that are just exciting me more.
Well, I love what you said there about listening more to the way you feel. And I think personally for me, it's like that's always been very hard. I think like a bad habit that I've had for pretty much my entire life has just been like very out of tune with my emotions and I guess not trust my intuition as much. And then about a month or two ago, I actually had a breakup and then it was such a painful experience for me. And going through all that, having all that happen really taught me, like, how to listen to my feelings more and just be more in touch with my emotions, and, like, that's a skill that developing that has already helped me so much in business and just, like, every other area of life. And I saw Chris Williamson here about a month ago, and something he said that really stuck with me that ties into what you were saying was, like, you measure the quality of your life by how excited you feel to wake up in the morning. And like how do you feel at the start of each day? And that was something that I really took home with me. And I think of each day, it's like, how excited do I feel to do the things that I'm doing right now? And do you think that you've always been able to listen to your emotions like that, or has that been a skill that you've had to develop?
Yeah, it's definitely a skill that I had to develop, and that's part of why I wrote that post.
Yeah.
And to go into, the second half of that caption on that post, uh, you know, I really realized that freedom to me is not what I thought that I was chasing.
Mm,
And the only way that I figured that out was through introspection and through listening to myself. And again, writing down what do I really value? Who do I want to be, etc. And what that looks like is my whole life, I thought that if I could be free, I would be happy.
yeah.
So apart from the Rolexes and these kind of accomplishments, let's say, which I also thought would make me happy and successful, I kind of had this idea that true success is true freedom. So I have to be location independent. I have to be financially independent, meaning that I have to have millions of dollars and not have to worry about money again. And I have to be time independent. So I have to be able to do whatever I want to do every single day. And I thought that was the true definition of happiness and success. Because if I had those three things, then in theory, well, I can buy whatever I want within reason. I can travel wherever I want. I can see the whole world and I can take care of friends, family, and I have the time to actually enjoy it and spend it with them. So how could you possibly want anything more than those three freedoms, right? That's what I thought. And then I realized that, and the reason why I realized is because I went through it, but I made millions of dollars. I bought my time back effectively so that, the majority of my day I could do what I want. And I started traveling the world. At one point, all of 2023, I was hopping from country to country. I was seeing the whole world.
Yeah.
And, throughout this entire time, I'd say 2023 and 2024, I felt more stressed, more anxious, more on edge, more worried than I'd ever felt before. And yet I had all this stuff, all this freedom, right? All this time, all this money. I was taking care of my family in ways that I dreamt that I could. And don't get me wrong, all that stuff felt great. But it was like something was really missing because I wasn't experiencing the happiness that I thought that I would. And when I really kind of pulled back the curtain on this and dove into the journal and really figured out, what it was it was that I had just created this vision and this cage, this perfect cage of what I thought that, true freedom and true happiness was. And there I was inside of it. and I was enjoying it, don't get me wrong, there were some awesome experiences and some awesome, time throughout this period, but I wasn't truly happy with who I was, and I wasn't who I wanted to be internally. And so what I realized is that true freedom isn't anything in your external environment. It isn't anything that you can have. It isn't even anything that you can give. It isn't even anywhere that you could see. But true freedom is only inside of you. And it's being so comfortable in your own skin and who you are that, you could put me in uh, a shoebox. You could take away all my money. You could take away all my connections. You could deplatform me, and I'd still be happy to wake up every single day and live my life. So when you remove all these external things, are you happy? Are you free? And if the answer is yes, then, I now believe you truly are happy and free, but it can only come from within. And it's so weird. And I never would have known this if I didn't experience it myself firsthand, because even explaining it, it doesn't fully make sense because you have everything you could possibly want and more, but you still feel trapped. It's like the more money, more problems. The more things you have going on, the more things you're doing, the more traveling you're doing, the more people that rely on you, that depend on you, the more money you have, the more investments you're making. This is all stress. This is all a weight on your shoulders, right? And you know, the guy down the street who wakes up, goes to his 9 to 5 that he enjoys every single day, that goes home, that plays his guitar, that hangs out with his family, and tucks his kids into bed at night. That guy might be more happy and more free than the multimillionaire entrepreneur that's traveling around the world, that's putting their parents in mansions, that's taking their friends for the coolest experiences because he's happy with who he is on the inside. And that entrepreneur might be always searching for more, always trying to outdo himself, to do better, always trying to increase those three freedoms: the time, location, financial. And there is no end to increasing those freedoms. There's always more. When it comes to time freedom, you can always have more of your time back. When it comes to location freedom, you can always see more places. When it comes to financial freedom, you can always, be able to spend more money to take the helicopter to Whistler for the night, to take the yacht out with all your friends, to put your parents in a bigger and better house or whatever it is. There's no end, right? And so that was like the biggest thing that I realized throughout most of 2024 and even 2025, and that kinda went into that post.
Do you feel like you've achieved complete inner freedom or gone to that point where it's up to you're fully comfortable in your house?
No, I think it's certainly still a process. I think, there's certainly still limiting beliefs, there's certainly still, insecurities, there's certainly still, a lot of things, but I now know what makes me really truly fulfilled and truly happy. And I now know how to work towards that. And I know what the right kind of self development is for me.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a very freeing thing where it's just like, again, I can just let go, and I can just trust in the universe, trust in God, trust in myself, and just keep one foot moving in front of the other every single day. And whatever happens is meant to happen. And living by that philosophy grants me a lot more inner freedom than living by the old philosophy of mine, which was I can impact everything and everyone, and every single day I'm going to get up and I'm going to do the work, and that's going to change my life. That's going to change other people's lives. And that philosophy is great, but it hits a wall because where do you stop? And there's endless stress and pressure that comes along with it. And so now it's like, yes, I'm still working hard. Yes, I'm still showing up. I'm putting in the reps. I'm building my future, but I'm doing it with a much greater sense of inner freedom because I've let go of the what ifs. I've let go of the stress. I've let go of the expectations. I've let go of the pressure. I've let go of what other people think. And these are really hard things to unravel. And I still have, more of them to kind of drop and continue lowering that guard. But now I truly believe that's how you build inner freedom. And kind of you were mentioning a little bit before that I'm not sure if it was freedom, but you said something that sparked this thought where it was like, it's not always about the more things you can add, but it's about the more things you can subtract.
Right.
And so I think that's very true when it comes to, this idea of inner freedom and happiness and success. It's like, what are the things in your life that are causing you stress that you can subtract out of the equation? And ideally, if you can subtract everything and if you can just be happy as a human on this planet with nothing, that is when you are truly, truly free because you don't rely on anything else for that happiness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what do you think was the thing that was the hardest for you to subtract? Like, the one thing that you knew intuitively in the back of your head that, like, you need to subtract that to have a better life or achieve your goals or become more happy. You knew intuitively, like, it it wasn't good for you, but you just didn't want to admit it to yourself, or you didn't wanna do the hard thing by taking it away.
Yeah, I think it was some of the timelines and goals that I'd set for myself.
Interest.
And, I'm not saying don't set goals and don't create these timelines, but it reached a point where I ripped all that shit out of my journal. I wiped the slate clean and I was like, you know what? Like, fuck these goals, fuck these outcomes, fuck this timeline. I don't need to be at this amount of money by this age and this size business by that age and like all this shit because it's causing me so much stress and it's actually holding me back. And when I got rid of that, there was this sense of peace and it was just like, wow, for once, after all these years, I'm not like constrained to trying to achieve certain metrics in all these ways in my life. And let's just flow through life like water. Like let's just like move and just see where life takes me. And of course, still keep building skills, still keep learning, follow my passions, chase my dreams, but let's not put all these constraints around me. Let's not force myself to hit these targets and these goals. Let's just see what happens if I show up every single day and keep taking those steps forward. And so far, what's happened is I've been happier, I've been freer, I've been more successful, I've been making faster progress. And it's just been a really cool experience just subtracting all of this pressure that I put on myself. I put myself in that cage ultimately.
That really reminds me of the concept of detachment. And something I've learned from my own life is the self-belief is what creates the greatest sense of detachment. It's like believing so much in your ability to do something and like having so much confidence and conviction in yourself that like you're going to achieve your goals anyways. You're going to do great things. You know that you're going to do whatever you set out to do. So you don't need to spend all this time worrying about it. Or or like say or saying to yourself like I need to hit this income at a certain age. Like I need to become a millionaire at 21 or like I need to have like 10 mil in the bank at 25. Like that you're going to achieve your financial goals, so you don't need to put all this pressure on yourself.
Yeah, I think another thing that goes into that is, you focus on the what and the how,
Right.
but you leave the when up to God or up to the universe if you prefer. So it's like because I'm someone who I always thought I could control the when as well. And it took me so long to realize that there are way too many variables. And when you're working with people and big teams and companies and you cannot control everything. You are one man, right? So as soon as I remove the when from the equation and it's like, all right, let's just focus on the what and the how and show up every day and do the work. I felt more free, more peace, started making faster progress and with less stress.
So that's such a great point. Which part of your life do you think has grown the most this year that you don't necessarily talk about too much online?
Yeah, I think 2025. to sum it up again with that post and what we talked about was a big year for me about learning about myself and so you can call that spiritual growth or you can call that psychological or emotional growth, but really just self-development on that kind of inner, deeper level. I'd say 2024, the biggest area of my life that I grew in would have been in my relationships. I really feel like I developed very stronger bonds with my family members, my close friends. I spent more time in Vancouver at home than I ever have in the previous years, and I got into a new relationship as well. And that's been all of 2024 that grew and changed me tremendously. 2025 was definitely more inner, and then I think this year in 2026, so far I'm off to a good start in terms of more of the outer world. So more of the, business and wealth and experiences that way and, learning from other people and developing my career. So I also think, I live my life in seasons and different years. They kind of have this core centralized theme, right? 2023 for me was a big year in business. 2022, not so much. 2022 is more about, or sorry, 2022 was a huge year in business for me. 2023 wasn't as much, but 2023 I got really into health. So some health complications started popping up with my immediate family members. I got really into learning about, biohacking and supplementation and taking care of my body. And not just on a visual level, but also on like, okay, how is my nervous system functioning? How's my respiratory system? How's my cardio health? Not so much just like, okay, here's my physique. How much can I bench press? But more health from a holistic perspective. So, yeah, every year I think has its core centralized theme, and that just kind of happens naturally. But when I look back year to year, if at the end of the year I can say that I'm healthier, I'm happier, I'm more intelligent, I'm richer, my career has improved, then to me, it's been a fantastic year, and I can't ask for anything else.
What do you think you wanna do before you die? Like, what's on your bucket list?
It's a good question. I think a year or two ago I would have had a long list for you,
Yeah.
but I think now, I don't put that kind of stress and pressure on myself anymore of like, I have to do this and this and this and this. But of course, there's still some thoughts that come into my mind. Um, I'd like to go skydiving, but I'm kind of afraid.
Yeah, same, yeah.
So I'm taking my time with it. Um, I would like to do heli skiing. I like skiing, but I've never really. I've also, again, kind of afraid of heli skiing. It is also quite dangerous, like statistically. So, some of the stuff that are things that I want to do. The unfortunate reality is they also do have like quite a bit of a risk element
Yeah.
associated with them as well. Um, I would say I want to see more of the world. I've already been to, I think, just over 30 countries, which is not too bad for my age, but I'd like to get to, if I put a number on it, at least 100. Uh, and my dad's been to probably around 100 as well. He'd done a lot of traveling. He used to work for the airline and stuff. So I want to match him. It's kind of just like something I want to do. And yeah, man, just really, I just want to keep doing more of what I'm currently doing and just see what other doors life opens for me.
Last question that I like to ask to a lot of the guests that come on is what do you wanna be remembered for?
It's a tough one. There's a lot of things, but I would say I don't care to be remembered by, the world or everyone. Sure, leaving a legacy would be nice, but ultimately, by the people that I do get to impact and the people that I do get to reach, in my time and in my life, uh, I want to be remembered as a good guy, you know, just a good, simple guy that people could rely on if they had a problem and, they called me up and I was there for them. That's it.
Well, then. Well, Nathan, thank you so much for coming on. That's such a good time.
Of course, yeah, that was a great conversation. So thanks for having me. And well, I guess I'm kind of having you, but thank appreciate that and checking it out. I know you came all the way from the island, took a ferry and everything, but yeah, always happy to have you here. Fantastic conversation, and I look forward to seeing it get out there, and hopefully people can learn a thing or two, or just enjoy this conversation that we had.
Definitely, man. Yeah. Well, great to have you on.
Thanks.